board. First up is public comment, which is comment on anything not on the liquor control board, not select board. Want to talk liquor?
I mean,
Seeing none, and the fact that there's no samples.
Most importantly.
Approval of the agenda. I'm thinking it's going to be a long night, and it might be more fun.
so moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the business side of this, which is approving permits for 4 entities.
With the Babes are, when are we approving that they can cater all the time
It's
or
a
just that one
catering.
time? Just that one time? I mean, it doesn't
It
matter.
looks like a one-time event to me, but
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
print it out.
They're limited to whatever the time rate is or that one event.
Gotcha. So you have to go
Or a
back and
series
check.
of events, I guess it could be, but.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, motion to approve all as presented.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. I will call the select board meeting to order. First up. Comments. Is anything not on the select board agenda? Seeing no hands and people jumping up and down and nobody coming off, we'll move on to approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the consent calendar. This is the meeting minutes and warrants.
I just had one small, I don't even know if it matters, but there's an E missing in my name at one point. I don't know if it's even worth
You
admitting.
can claim it wasn't you. Is it, what's the topic?
It was a motion to adjourn, I think, so I definitely want that to
So you want to give more credit for
I
that?
do want credit for that. I don't know if it's worth it. Always is to move into executive session. But I don't know if it's really that major, but
You can approve the consent calendar with that one change and
so moved.
Judy will find it.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Requests for assembly permits. We have 4 of them tonight. So we might as well start with the first one, the 4th of July parade. Would you like to come on up and chat about that one?
If you'd like me to, I can. This is just a request for the assembly permit for our annual 4th of July celebration, which has been going on for decades, and the post-parade festival at the rec field. It's all in planning stage now, and we're getting ready to produce another fantastic event. So I hope you approve it.
Do you have the volunteers lined
Yeah,
up?
I have almost all volunteers lined up, both parade walkers and traffic control, yep.
So you have 12 to 15 volunteers? and
I'm up to
8
10 for traffic control now.
10 for traffic control?
Yep,
Okay, so we have volunteers, then we have red vests.
red vests, that's for our parade walkers, yep.
And you got 10 to 12 of those too?
I have 10 of those
So you have 20 volunteers right now?
so far.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
There was a problem with the radios last year. Did that get worked out?
I don't remember what exactly the problem with the radios was. I think it was maybe our radios weren't synced with the police radios, but I'm getting 15 radios again this year, and maybe the police will take one or two of them.
You'll be meeting with Scott anyway?
I am, yeah.
On that, so that can be
Absolutely.
worked out. Okay. And then, the one thing that he had talked about was if there's not enough volunteers, having a straight shot from the
But we will
hospital
have
down
enough
through.
volunteers.
But he asked us if we would approve a straight shot path if there isn't enough volunteers. So I think it's like a, if
The, yeah.
this, then this is the route. If you have enough volunteers, then that's the route
right,
type of thing. Okay.
okay? Anything else?
Were the payments from last year finalized?
Oh, yeah, everything was taken care of.
I think we are up to date
Okay,
with the reading,
okay.
that's right.
I saw something in there about it, so.
No, everybody's been paid.
Have we seen are there any food vendors lined up?
The Rotary has committed to selling hot dogs and hamburgers, and Babes will be there.
That's the one we
Was
just
it there,
approved.
the permit you just approved?
Gotta have beer, but they gotta have some food too.
Well, we've got, I've got queries into a couple of other food trucks, so we will have plenty of food.
Just goes better.
I know, yes, absolutely.
Hot
Very
day.
important.
Yes.
All right. Anybody else have any questions on it?
So I just pulled the map up from last year with the different locations. I'm not sure it came through in some of the printed one doesn't have the marked up map, but same map as last year showing.
Yeah,
where folks
that's
should
what
be.
we're working with, Trevor.
And Scott's request is if there isn't enough volunteers to go straight from the hospital
Straight down Main Street to school,
Be
yeah.
this little jag right here, yeah.
But I'm pretty confident we will be fine.
We can leave that decision up to Scott.
Yeah.
He can make it. If he feels it's covered and it'll be safe. Because there's also 8 officers and 4 marked units that have to be lined up to make that work.
Right, yeah.
We don't have 8 officers.
Well, Loretta comes
We
with from
just
South
barely-
Worldton.
Well, we don't have 7 officers.
Well, even with Loretta,
So-
we're still 1 to 2 short depending on availability, so we're working on that piece.
Well, and I'll be hopefully meeting with him next week. I haven't heard back from him.
So our approval would be contingent upon Scott agreeing. I guess.
Well, I think you can
Any other?
go for approve both Plan A and Plan B, and that would take care of it.
Well, we'll just approve it and Scott has the final say
All right,
on where
okay.
it goes.
Thanks.
And that'll take care of it. Anybody want to make a motion on that one?
I move that we approve the assembly permit for the parade,
Kimball friends are not marching this year.
with our chief of police being given the final discretion as to the route.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have our AC/DC Make Music Day. Anybody here for that one? Did anybody have questions on that?
It seems like that was mostly on private property, isn't it?
We did it last year, and I think that year 1, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but
It's been happening
happened a
for,
couple times.
yeah. But I think that it was more in like distinct locations. I think it's gotten a little bit larger. It's on a Saturday this year, which is actually pretty nice for it. I didn't have any major questions. Other than that, it looked like Scott signed off on that, so I'm guessing we know he's good with that.
Yeah, in fact, they didn't need any law enforcement for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So motion to approve the permit for Make Music Day.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The fire department fireworks. Anybody have any questions on that one? I assume you got your meeting with Scott on the police coverage.
Yes, he already told me that he was gonna have 1 or 2. And it was just gonna be the same setup as last year. We'll have the cruiser in the front. applicants and wander around.
Okay. I saw he had put what he needed, I just wanted to make sure that was communicated. Okay.
Motion to approve as presented?
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the 50501 Randolph No Kings Day Rally.
Yeah.
So, this permit is for an entity that doesn't exist.
Excuse me?
The permit is for 50501 Randolph, Vermont, and there's no such entity listed.
Well, there was a mix-up. The papers were filled out, but they never got, I never got a confirmation, and then it turned out that they say they didn't have them, so I filled them out again.
The papers for who?
There's a Vermont organization called 5051.
Okay, so we can't issue a permit to a non-existing entity. So who are we issuing the permit to?
The people of Randolph who want to protest.
Well, that's not an entity either, so it either has to be an individual or an entity.
Well, the town told me I needed to come get a permit.
Okay, so who's organizing the event?
Well, supposedly I am, but all I did was put an announcement in the paper that it would happen.
So it's
I don't
your,
know anything about organizing anything.
okay, so the permit's to you,
I guess so.
it's your event.
But I don't want it to be my event. I
Well,
want it to
if
be the people's event.
somebody has to have ownership here.
Okay, well, I guess
So-
it has to be.
And the phone number on the paper is yours or somebody else's?
Is it 239-292-3281?
Yep.
That's mine.
So, just a couple of technical things, you're asking to use the sidewalk on both sides of the street at the same location.
Well, that's how it happened last time.
Okay, but we have to leave a sidewalk open for users, people that want access to the town.
Okay, so only one side of the street then? Okay, we'll take the gazebo side.
How many people are, so in one spot you say, you'd have no idea how many people are coming?
No idea. This is not a group. This is just for the people of the town who want to come. And I have no idea who that is.
So how do we determine if the space that you're looking to use is appropriate
Well,
for
we
keeping the
did
number of
this-
people out
We
of
did this
the?
a couple weeks ago or a month ago, and there were about 50 people. So I would say I was going by that. But honestly, I don't know, it's just been advertised. You know,
So
and
what do you
now-
do if you have more than 50 people?
What?
What are you gonna do if you have more than 50 people? How are you gonna keep people out of the street and out of the areas where traffic and people need to move that are not part of it?
What?
Didn't happen last time.
Yeah, I mean, no one went into the street last time.
Well, but that was last time.
Yeah.
Right, and this one's
This is
advertised and
all
it's
I
been
know.
out there more. I'm just trying to figure out, it's our responsibility to make sure the area is safe and that people can move around. That's all I'm trying to figure out is, are you identifying a location for this that will have the appropriate size to keep people from getting into traffic or into blocking people from walking up the sidewalk?
Yeah, well, we can have people there who ask people to stay on the gazebo side and not go in the street. But that would just happen because we'd ask people to do that on site. And this is all I can tell you. I didn't even know a permit was applicable.
So it is if you're gonna do an event on town property.
Mhm.
And then it's our job to figure out if it's going to be a problem with the safety and circulation of the
Right.
public, right? So one of the big issues we have with people not getting into the street is if we're going to block the street, like you just saw the parade permit as an example, then the fire department and law
Yeah,
enforcement
but
and
you're
whatnot
talking
have to.
about hundreds and hundreds of people.
No, it's any time. So we've had smaller events where we've blocked the street for them.
Mhm.
And they've done different things, but it's just a matter of allowing the fire department and the police department to know what's going on so they can make plans. So,
Yeah,
you know, the fire department can tell their folks, hey, look, there's gonna be something in downtown. If we get called to this type of call, we need to go this way to get to it. So they don't get down to you and suddenly they can't get through
yeah,
and we're wasting critical time. That's
yeah,
that's what these permits are about,
okay,
is to allow for that type of planning.
right, I didn't know that. I thought they were about, oh, you can't protest, but, you
Yeah,
know.
right.
We don't have a problem with you.
What?
We don't have a problem with that. It's more of
Yeah,
how do we judge how many
I-
people you're gonna try to
Yeah.
put on that little square?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the last time when it was done, the police knew about it. And there was communication with them.
Oh,
And
for sure.
about 50 people showed up. At the time, we didn't know about the 2 sidewalks, but no one went in the street and the traffic was never blocked.
I didn't hear
Right.
anything bad about the last
Right.
one. But, you
No,
know,
it's
each
just-
one's different, so are you
Yeah.
gonna have more people this time? Are you gonna have
Uh,
less people this time? Like,
you know, apparently, it's this network that I was reaching out to seems to be just as disorganized as I am.
well, that's not helping us any.
No, I know, I didn't forget that.
At least you're honest.
That's just what happened, and, you know, and I didn't understand.
Would it make
There's quite a bit that goes into these, but
Would it make more sense to ask to use the green in front of the gazebo rather than the sidewalk? That way you can leave.
Well, the people want to have signs to hold up when cars go by.
Yep.
On that green thing, the cars won't see them. So that, they're gonna go on the sidewalk anyway. As, is my guess, because that's what happened last time. I called it for the gazebo and they were right on the sidewalk.
Okay.
And, there's nothing in me that knows how to move people or organize people or tell people what
But
to
you're
do.
advertising an event and you're bringing action into the downtown and people, and then your answer is, I've never done this, I have no idea what I'm doing.
I
It's,
know,
I
I
just put an
just-
ad in the paper.
That's right.
But you're creating this situation.
I did.
And so what you need to do is take ownership of it
Well,
and
I'm
help
trying-
us figure out how we make
I'm-
sure
I'm
it's
trying
safe
to,
and people
the-
can use
the-
it.
The best I can say is maybe there'll be 50 people again. I don't know what everyone's doing on Saturday.
Well, one of the things that's gonna help you with that number is it's gonna rain.
I know, that's true. And I figure.
Not to be
I'll have
obvious about it, but-
I'll have to be out in the rain no matter what, even if I'm the only one there. And the last time, honestly, I was thinking it was highly possible I'd be the only one there, and then there were 50-ish people. I didn't count them, but I was told there were, 50 people. So I just thought Randolph needed a way to get together and express themselves. I didn't know I had to do anything else. But that's how dumb I am.
Nobody's calling you dumb.
No,
It's a-
I'm
It's
calling
a
you
bureaucratic
dumb.
process, but it's there for a reason, right? So
Yeah.
Andy knows what to tell his folks and where to go and where
Yeah,
not
but
to
he's a
go.
professional.
But when they get to you and the road's blocked because you end up with 200 people
So,
trying to cram onto a small piece of property, that's where the problem
so
comes.
why don't we turn this around and say what we have to make happen to be able to do this by the gazebo?
I think you gotta have just a count that will fit on that parcel. So that
Yeah.
you're not coming into the road or blocking the sidewalks.
So you don't want anyone on the sidewalks?
No,
We don't usually let the sidewalks be part of an event
What
like this,
about, I know
but
there's a group
they
that
do.
meets in front of the bank on Wednesdays for an hour on the sidewalk. What about them? I mean, isn't that the same thing?
It's the same people, they're there, they walk from the church up through. It's not really,
It's more like loitering than a protest. An event.
they don't advertise it, they don't.
Everybody can order on Saturday.
And that sidewalk is like larger, there's usually like
Yeah.
4 to 5 people, it's not blocking anything, it's like.
Right, no, I know it's
So
only.
when you advertise an event like this large and, you know,
yeah.
we
Well, I
just wanna
didn't
make
know
sure.
this was large. This is just.
Well, it's
what
more than
happened.
5 people,
Huh?
it's more than 5 people.
Just a second, there's, so
Hopefully
if you
anyways.
look at,
Okay, well,
some of the
good
data
picture.
coming in on these events, like, White River Junction, Lebanon is expecting about 2,500, so if
Yeah.
anybody's planning to be in that area Saturday, don't.
They have the population for that.
Yeah,
And
and they're
for-
going back and forth, but then there's some, you know, like Newberry is expecting 400 to 500. So, you know, that's smaller than us. So, you know, you can start to see where the concern's coming from.
I do. I mean, that's no
It's,
question. I just,
So how big an event can you have by the gazebo in terms of people?
I don't know that I've ever figured it out. Bet you could get 100 there safely.
Yeah, and like Santa visits there, there's
Yeah.
some hot chocolate and stuff around Halloween time.
And Halloween, yeah.
Yeah, probably about 100.
Yeah.
And you've been in talks, I saw you were in talks with Scott, you've talked to him?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And what happened for first protest was Scott contacted me and said, I'm gonna be there watching over this, but I'm not gonna be present as police presence. I'm gonna be within a minute of where you are watching, and no one will know I'm there, and here's my cell phone number. And if you see anything questionable, call me. Which wasn't necessary, but I felt really good about that, so,
Have you talked with him about this one?
yes, he told me to get the permit.
But has he weighed in on whether you need? is- Yeah, but his section and Andy's section are blank,
Yeah.
which tells me they didn't weigh in on it and didn't know anything about
No, I
it. So I'm
came
trying
to-
to figure out, like,
What happened was,
it's got nice sketches on it.
thank
That
you.
helps.
I do know how to do that. When Scott told me to come here, I didn't know what the form was, and I just came alone and filled it out and gave them $10 and left. So, that's why it's blank. how was that form to get to them?
You're supposed to take it to them.
You get to
It
take
didn't
it.
say that. I'm very literal, I have to say, I'm very literal.
Inexperienced.
What?
Inexperienced.
Exactly.
You're not experienced, right?
Right, that's the word.
Yep.
Right. But
Can I weigh in on the fire department side of it?
Sure.
Is, I mean, here's what you need to do, is make sure no one blocks the street.
yeah,
If they do, make sure they move.
yeah,
If they block the sidewalk and people are walking by, make sure they move, right? It's the same. I would hope they wanna go in the street to make it impassable for vehicles.
oh, I don't think
fire
anyone
trucks,
wants to do
that
that.
kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? So, you said you didn't know what, that's the first step,
right.
right? Is to make sure that no one is going in the road and keep trying to keep
Yeah.
the sidewalks.
Yeah, we did that last time, by the way. Yeah, if you drove by,
I
there was
did
no
not.
one in the street.
Right, I'm not saying it was.
Yeah, yeah, I'm just saying.
Weighing in on
Yeah,
the fire
that's
department side, I
obvious.
haven't even looked at it, like Trini said, I haven't even looked at it. I'm just, those would be my only concerns, is that
Yeah.
you make sure that people are moving. And I'm sure that would be Scott's concern as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Linda wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, I just want to say that last time, people were really respectful of traffic and people using the sidewalk, and it was a really nice event. There was no hostility or nothing like that, and there were quite a few, I think there were more than 50.
Trevor Whittinger.
But everybody was very respectful of traffic and people using the sidewalk. If someone was walking by, there was plenty of space for people to move, and it was really fine.
Yeah, we
And then
didn't get
it's
any
mo-
complaints,
it's
it's what if it's
mostly-
bigger?
It's
What do we
mostly
do?
old people.
Yeah, we heard that.
So I failed.
No.
It's a learning experience.
Well, yeah,
That's all.
but, you know, these people are all gonna still come, whether you give them a permit or not tonight, because it's in the paper and
Do
they
we,
know about it, but I don't know
do we
how many are
strict
planning.
signs on the gazebo? Like, no, because we don't allow political signs on the gazebo.
Well, if they're like anchored down versus in a hand, does that make a difference?
Mm.
Yeah, there's a difference between a one-day event and like a
But I mean,
candidate
like
sign
on
kind
the
of thing.
gazebo, like no signs on the
Right.
gazebo.
Yeah, it'd have to be like handheld, right?
Yeah, that would
Oh,
make, that
No
sounds
signs on the
reasonable.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Oh, no, no signs.
Yeah.
People brought signs and they held them. And, since it's Flag Day, I suggested in the Herald that people might wanna bring a flag. And that would be instead of a sign, I assume.
But we don't know.
I'm assuming that.
If this happened every year, like the 4th of July, we would eventually know.
We'd work out the kinks.
What about this? I mean, this is sort of a novel event, and guessing how many people is gonna show up is sort of an unreasonable expectation. I mean, but, you know, there's not gonna be 1,000 people there. There's probably gonna be more than there was last time. So it's someplace, you know, between there. I would feel comfortable saying maybe there's gonna be double the number of people last time. If there's more than that, I would be really surprised if it was a lot more than that. So it's just a guess, but I think that's the best we're gonna do.
So how do we make sure they stay on that,
Rachel,
on that space?
Rachel will get after them.
Yeah. Is one person enough? Like, how do we, you have volunteers helping you?
No, I'm just, I could maybe find some people who are interested in helping. I can't guarantee it, because not everyone likes to do anything, but everyone was pretty excited
about it.
about waving the flag, so.
So if you set it up with 4 or 5 volunteers who are essentially appointed to be the sidewalk and street marshals,
Right.
and they just herd
Yeah.
people back in over and over that night,
We could do that.
Do they need to wear a uniform?
if they want to. They don't have to.
Oh, okay.
The vest probably would be
Oh, yeah.
good, I would suggest.
Something high visibility would add a
Yeah.
little bit of
Right.
safety, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a-
So,
a vest, and
Bright
like a.
yeah, do,
vest.
that's something like I could
Street vest.
probably get it at Central?
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably got them.
Yeah.
If not, Miles Supplies has them.
Ooh,
Miles Supplies in Barry.
Yeah.
oh God, I don't go there.
Or maybe
Sorry.
like Abishon's in South Royalton. I don't know.
You could put them all in the same color t-shirt too.
Yeah.
Like everybody
That's
wears a
true,
red
too.
t-shirt or
Oh.
whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do my best.
I bet you could paint the t-shirts to make them a certain way for them too, couldn't you?
Yeah.
I
Ooh.
sure, that's my work
Yeah.
tomorrow. I'm doing my love hand-painted t-shirt.
All right.
What would I say on it?
I don't
Protest
care.
march?
Traffic control.
That was.
Controller.
Boom.
Herder.
Herder.
It could be event volunteer, and then it could be
There you
used
go.
for all sorts of things.
Nice and easy.
Yeah.
Suggesting in the chat that Gifford Thrift Store has vests often too, so you can check that.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
good
But
idea.
the t-shirts would be fun.
That's really good idea.
Yeah. I gotta buy a flag. I wanna do the flag.
You're gonna have some up at Barry.
Paint the flag on the t-shirts. I think we got this.
I try to do all my
If we
shopping
approve
in
it,
Randolph.
4 to 5 volunteers, they gotta keep everybody on that space.
Okay.
All right.
That's simple.
Okay, so.
All right.
Good ask.
So motion to approve this event with 4 to 5 volunteers, and they must stay within the gazebo grass area and leave one sidewalk open. Does that cover all of our,
Yeah, and the permit's gonna be,
to Rachie Farrow?
Rachie.
Okay, and the permit will be to you, Rachie Farrow.
Just what I didn't want, but it's fine. I got myself into this.
that's what happens when you start these things.
Now you-
Lose control.
now you know why I used to get kicked out of school.
Me too, but not for the same reason. All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You are good to go.
You're good to go.
Best of luck.
You got those conditions, right?
Um,
Volunteers and keep them on the green.
Say yes.
yeah, and no one across the street.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep, and no blocking traffic, yeah.
You got it.
And it should be within an hour time. Oh,
Where are you going?
I thought I could leave.
Yeah, you-
You can.
You can, he
You
can.
Thank you, thank you.
Wow, you got it at home too, huh? All right, we have a recommendation for the health and deputy health officer to swap roles. But then they want to swap back. And so,
If things allow a swap back, they would probably ask to swap back at some point, yeah.
I have an issue if he doesn't have a background in healthcare or the medical field at all. I kind of have an issue with him being the health officer.
have you looked at the duties?
No, however, I'm just saying, like, there, I mean, I wouldn't
I'd
want
say-
someone from the highway crew, no offense, highway crew, being a health officer if they don't really, it's just my 2 cents.
They end up doing a lot of rental related,
Yeah.
code inspections almost, junk and garbage complaints, the occasional sewage or septic issue. It can vary a little bit, but most of the calls I think fall within those spheres.
Yeah.
Most towns are not as fortunate to have one healthcare professional in the mix. They usually take whichever live body wasn't fast enough to step out of the way when the appointment.
Who didn't look down?
Yeah.
But if it's a temporary thing and she wants to go back, that's the purpose of a deputy. So I think we just leave it the way it is, let him step into the leadership role for a while, and when she's better and wants to step back in, they work it out. I mean, they're in the same household, so I'm guessing they can,
Not a lot of communication issues there.
well, we don't know that.
They know where
We
to,
would
how
assume.
about they know where to find each other?
I think we leave it the way it is and let him step up and take up more of a lead, and when she's ready, they can swap back. And we haven't had, because we gotta put it to the health department, and then when they want to swap back, we gotta go back to the health department to do it. It just,
Yeah,
Seems
technically,
like-
the commissioner of the Department of Health makes the appointment.
Oh, we just make the recommendation.
You make a recommendation, yeah. I don't even know how old that provision is, but it's been.
I think we can skip that. All right, a donation to the rec department. Anybody have any concerns with accepting that?
What a lovely thing.
Just have one question on the wording of the email we got, or the letter from Rebecca. And maybe Morgan can clarify this, did she bring it to the rec committee? Or did Morgan say you should really write this request, this is the best way to go about it? Because when it says on advice from Morgan Easton, so I'm just want clarification. Did Morgan say write the request, this is how you should go about it, or didn't?
Yeah,
It's just making me, just,
It's
Clarification.
more organic, but yeah.
okay.
so she called totally out of the blue.
Yep.
Wanted to let us know that we're in her will, the rec department, which we said, okay, how do we accept something like that? And then she said more immediately, she would like to give us this immediate amount. And so then that,
Excuse me.
made us realize we don't really have a proper format in accepting gifts above $250 that actually appropriately gives people a receipt of that gift to make sure that they can get it for tax purposes.
Yep.
So between Judy, myself, and Trevor, and Kayla, we did a fair amount of research through VLCT, and I have actually a policy
They did all
that's-
the research, I just.
So we did a little bit of like, I wrote a draft outline of kind of all the things that we gathered from VLCT, which one of them was getting that blessing from the select board, and then in giving her that letter, since we're not a nonprofit in the same traditional way, but we are tax exempt as a municipality, there is a function to do that. So now Milo and I are working on making sure that we have an understanding of kind of what those tiers are. So if we take in a sponsorship at $250, we still wanna make sure that person, cause that's the amount, that's the baseline to what you do have to start to give that recognition for tax purposes. So it's been very helpful for us to understand for future capital improvement, potential fundraising opportunities, and making sure that we have this developed before we were to do any other larger, potential fundraising opportunities to improve some of our facilities. Is there any other? So yes, we told her to write the letter to then present it to you all to give the full scope of what her intention was, and then you all can kind of give us that blessing.
It's tied to reserve, cause that can transcend fiscal years. If it just went in as a general fund revenue right now on June 30th, it gets swept in with everything else that's left. And it's a little harder to figure out, or we'd have to deploy it before then. So putting it into the reserve, trying to tie it to capital upgrades gives it a little bit more of a shelf life and structure. So there's no magic in it, that was just the thought there in terms of where.
And we've been very much close in contact with her throughout the process, in just making sure we understand her intention of the funds. Like, she's been very explicit about, I do not want it to go into a scholarship fund. I really want it to be, intentional in the facilities improvements. She, just for a little background, she was only here for 8 years of her life in the 50s. And she said, quote, had a Norman Rockwell experience growing up in Randolph because of the recreation facilities and opportunities here in Randolph. So, and my great-grandfather's horse was her confidant throughout her 8 years here, so Velvet. So I had a nice personal touch with that, but it was pretty moving to have this out of the blue phone call for only 8 years of her life that she lived here. So. That's sweet.
So, do we have a policy now for accepting these gifts, or?
We follow what we're doing is following VLCT guidance, but when
I can share with you all what we gathered as that exact document, just so you know moving forward what they expect of this in your blessing, and then in our kind of follow-up there's an exact quote of what we need to say in the letter back to her to make sure that she gets that tax.
I guess my question was more like, are we creating a policy, because we are in that mode of
Yes,
like,
we are.
let's create policies so we have a clear.
Doesn't happen frequently, but it would be better to have it not need than the other way around. And it's one of the hoped for projects over the next few months is to revise the financial policies we have and maybe add the ones we don't have to that, and a donation policy would fit. I don't think it has to be anything extravagant or lengthy. It'll be.
I started one for the rec department in this way because of the sponsorship stuff and other donations we receive randomly. So we do have a draft started for the rec department, but I'd be happy to allow that to kind of expand beyond if someone wanted to give $25,000 to the rec department or the fire department or the highway department. They can receive those gifts similarly.
Yeah, one coordinated policy would be a good idea.
Yeah. I don't have any other objections to accepting the money or any other questions.
What's that?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
It's rare somebody gives us money without a bill and or threat of statutory compliance, so. Nice problem.
First
Or a
time for
lot of work.
everything. Is this the Randolph first?
No, I've had donations before, I
Alright, well, I was hoping.
just wasn't involved in the process of acceptance.
Town clerk's request to expand credit card options. Tammy was here.
Tammy's here.
So, yeah, we just need to broaden our platform. for people who use cards. So many times, people have to leave for $10, go to the ATM, come back, you know. But I did put, Trevor and I had talked a little bit about maybe some absorption for under a certain amount. It's like 2.65, like just absorb that. But I will leave it up to you guys to, and if you wanna take some time to think about it, what that looks like. Because I really don't, it's more, you know, you guys and Trevor that can decide what that absorption looks like. Obviously, if it's $10, it's pennies, you know what I mean? But just a way to make it easier for dog licensing.
Yeah.
And birth certificates, death certificates, all these different things that, even recording fees. Because we have to email them and they have to send us a check. And, you know, sorry,
Yeah.
I lose my words right now.
It uses the platform we're already on, so there
Yeah.
isn't any kind of migration issues there. It really is just about expanding the use of it. The question for you all is really, is there any amount we absorb? Because right now for utility bills or taxes, that's passed. There's a big note that happens right when you sign in, and that's passed right through to the payer. And obviously on those larger, we're talking about a property tax bill or a larger water wastewater bill, that's can be quite a bit in fees that the company charges.
Yeah.
So it might make sense to do a split model, and then as we talk about, you know, ties in nicely if we upgrade sort of our front of the house payment modules, we can expand the system, and then we'll get to a spot where transactions happen much like they would at any other location, so you can pay by card, by app, by preferably not gold to bloom, but we'll take it. Just have to convert it somehow.
So what is our grand total for those types of fees that we bring in every year? Are we talking about like $10,000 a year, or are we talking about $100,000 a year?
That I
Until we do it, we won't know how many transactions.
Well, but I mean, like
occur.
just in general though, like dog license, like all
Oh.
those fees that you, like, what's our annual income from that?
oh, annual income?
Yep, from those
What was
fees.
it?
Then bring a town report, we can give you an idea.
Even roughly
67?
$67,000.
No, 100.
100, yeah.
6,700. So $6,700.
Yeah, because we know that there's half the people that are not registering their dogs. We're working on that.
And the
But-
fees are generally smaller too. for
Yeah,
licensing
it's like
and shit.
$21, $19.
So shouldn't we be consistent?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
If we're gonna charge a fee, just charge a fee right across, like.
And, yeah.
Now all of a sudden, if a fee has a max on it, I'm gonna sit there and just keep popping those transactions through and pay my property tax and not
No, no,
pay the fee,
no,
right?
no,
Like-
not for those things. No. We just want to prevent people from having to walk across the street and go to the ATM.
For dog license.
For-
So you're like
for
dog
the-
license, birth certificate, death certificate.
Yeah,
And
I mean, if I didn't have my checkbook with me that day,
exactly.
I would have had to go get cash.
Exactly, and it's
I-
such an inconvenience. Like, we're in 2025,
and
I think.
You're good. Yep.
yeah.
And
But don't we set a percentage on the others? Like when you pay your taxes, doesn't it say
Yeah.
a percentage service fee?
Yeah, right now the end user pays the service fee. And we could set it up that way until we have a sense of how many
Yeah.
transactions, and then we'd be able to calculate if we carried it, what the cost would be. And so it's kind of a convenience charge for now.
If someone comes and pays with a check versus paying with a credit card, what's the difference on your end in terms of how much processing and staff time it takes to do either one of
None.
those? There's no real difference?
nope, the process is the exact same.
They just don't have to put the check in the bank.
Yeah, I just don't
It's
have to
actually
actually put it in the
easier.
reader
Wow.
for it to spin around the thing.
Okay, so it's not, there's not a significant amount of difference in.
No, all
okay.
my.
I kind of had it in my head that maybe processing a check would be more work, and so it might
No.
actually be better for the town if we had more people using credit cards for very small payments and not having to process checks. But if it really doesn't matter, then it,
Really doesn't matter, but for me,
It's-
it's about the convenience for the people. Because they come in here and we have to say, oh, that's $10 check or cash. Oh, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Are the fees set by statute or did we set them?
They're through municipal, they're
Yeah.
just the processing fees.
No, but I mean like,
Like a
for the
dog
dog
license?
license, like
Yes.
that cost, we set that, or is
That's
that
the
like
state.
state statute, so we can't change
No, we
that?
set the dog one,
Oh,
because
you
we're
do.
higher than everybody else.
we
Because
are,
We
and
get a lot of
actually,
complaints about that.
we wanna talk, yes,
A
Lori
lot
and I
of
would like
complaints.
to talk about that at some
Well,
point. But-
hold on, you didn't get that far in the agenda.
It's not on your agenda, we'll come back to that because it's already done for the year.
Yeah.
But, yes, it's,
So if we had $7,000 worth of fees that we brought in, it would cost us to run all of those through credit cards. The total cost to us would be $182. If we have a 2.6% fee. Is it like, but most of them have like a 10 or 15 cent each transaction. Do you have that with yours?
we
10
haven't
cents.
done anything, we don't do anything that low.
But we
can't-
have other, well, no, so like when, like in my processing system, like every transaction is 10 cents plus 3%, for example. So even if it's like a 50-cent thing, they'll take 10 cents plus 3% of that.
I think that is an absorption model B, at least a little bit. Looks like
Yeah.
there's that kind of add-on for certain ones.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's another percentage.
And you're talking
too.
about a year's time.
Yeah, well, I'm just putting it into perspective. So
Yeah.
if we ran $7,000, we're talking around $200-ish that we would lose by running credit cards.
But I kind of like
Without-
Trini's idea, like just everybody pays a certain percentage
Right,
if they use a
across the
credit
board.
card to recoup what it costs us to process, and it just keeps it really simple. And if it's a really small amount, you pay a really tiny percentage. It's just as easy for the resident to pay a few cents as it is for the town, and then we just treat all of them the same.
But are we allowed to by law though, by statute? Because if it says like this fee is $10 for like birth certificates or whatever, if that's set by the state and then we're charging more than that, is that against the law?
We're not,
We're not
a
charging them more
convenience
for
fee.
the thing, we're charging them to process the transaction. I think
Okay,
it's
as long as that's clear, I just wouldn't wanna get into this whole,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, because then you would run that, it would be, instead of $10, it'd be like $10 and like 32 cents or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So your transaction would show, you know, $10 for the thing, and would have the, whatever the processing cost is.
Yeah, on the receipt.
Yeah, I mean, it should.
Right, yeah.
Because if you do that with your tax.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
will when I
yeah,
print the
yeah.
receipt.
Yeah.
Either way is fine with me, quite
The
honestly.
newspaper collects that, and then we
Yeah.
get the original, if we leave it that way, then we get the.
Yeah,
I just want the option to be there
yeah.
for people. So you guys decide, that's fine. And then I can just let people know they can actually pay with a credit card.
We just want to meet customers where they're at,
I think
No.
it's fine to accept them and just do the same right across,
Yeah,
deal with it.
yeah, I think so too.
That'd be easiest to set up and then you can look at it. You can always make changes.
Yeah, we're not talking about huge money either way, so, I'm in favor of either option. I do like the idea of consistency, but, I don't feel strongly either way. Does anybody else having strong feelings?
Any motions?
Should we keep it so that they're paying the fees or that we are?
That they are, it's consistent across the board.
Okay, I motion to approve with the user paying the credit card fees.
A second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Zoning administrator proposal.
We got some handouts for this. Mark's on as well. Made some of the initial contacts, so we're looking. With Jeff's retirement, I've been telling everybody he's been leaving, but he's really retired, and he's leaving town. I'll pull some more of these up online, we'll get to it on the screen. We started looking at different options. We did post an ad out there. This idea would be for contract services that would provide the zoning.
Thank you.
Intake and review. It would help us set up an online or a digital system for permit application review and issuance. It would help us staff the planning commission and DRB as well. There would be some capacity provided for any community or stakeholder engagement activities, such as those that might come up with the town plan or any other sort of initiative that comes up. And then the idea would be that we would potentially be an anchor for kind of a regional hub and spoke system almost, where smaller towns also wanted to jump on, and then with each proportionate new entity that came on, we'd pay a little less. The fees you can see in there just sort of declining by time period anyway. And I just tried to put it across in those other sheets that you could kind of see where compared to the 26 budget is passed. We had a little bit of a benefit with Jeff when he switched over to his spouse's health insurance and went on the buyout for budget purposes. We went from a 2-person plan at $20-something thousand to a buyout at $3,500, but we haven't had much luck hiring people into buyout slots. They seem to all be taking the insurances, so we tried to do a high and a low, just so you could kind of see the range of what an employee might cost if they're on a buyout versus a family plan. And those are our costs that you see there. So in each scenario, we save a little bit in fiscal year 26, and then we would do this again in fiscal 27. So it's sort of a 2-year pilot program. It's Rethink Local is the organization. It's the former city manager. He's done a few other things from Hanover who's starting this up. They're hiring other people into their role with municipal experience. So there'd be time in office, there'd be time remote support, there'd be meeting support. So it is a more expensive contract model in a lot of ways, but it's still a lot less than an employee. And then what we could do with any of the extra employee costs that we'd save would be to be able to roll them over into other things. Initially, we'd want to make sure we have enough cost covered to move to an online permitting system. And the hope would be that we'd have plenty of capacity to go into the town's new website, which is coming. Mark can give you an update on that, but later this summer we'll have that. Could go in, apply for a permit. We even talked about setting up a kiosk in the building, so if somebody comes in and it's not one of the days the office hours are live, they can stand right there and fill out that online application, figure out if they need a permit in the first place, and if they do, how to apply for it. It's more complicated if they have to go to the DRB, but by and large, you're probably not trying to do that online if you've got a project of that size. Fences, garage, sheds, decks are, I think, the bulk of what we see. Signs, those could all go through that online model with there's always still human support on the back end as well. Doesn't work out, we go back to our original model. This does leave Mark with some of the grants management capacity in the short term. So we can start fairly soon. And like I mentioned, we'd use it for software application setup and in savings, but then we could also roll them into, we've talked the last, I think every budget cycle I've been with you about an engineering services agreement, so we might be able to sort of harvest those funds, put it toward that, and then we get the engineering help that we need, without having to try to figure out how to carry that as an employee or in some other sort of project specific way. We can go get sort of one general service provider through a bid process. And it could be used for additional planning support as we get into the town plan. If there's a specialty planning need, it would make sense to go out and get a consultant who has a subject area we just don't have but need due to changes in circumstance or state law or whatever. We have some capacity to do that. And then you could always just let it follow the bottom line and it comes off what we need to raise for operating funds too. There's always that option at the end of the day. So it creates a little bit of savings in those out years. How much so depends on what that employee cost would have been, but when you look straight line budget for this year, it's $10,000-$11,000. It's not a ton, but it's something. And this could be up and running within a couple of weeks from now, is the other nice part. We've done contract services before, usually through Two Rivers, usually for fewer hours than what we're proposing without any of the other committee commission support. So we do have some experience with that from recent years. I think we've done it in other years. Well, actually, Marty was here for a long time. But, I remember when Stephen Bauer was here, summer of 22, I think that was, from Two Rivers. So we've done it. It works. It's okay. training people to look when those hours are, especially if they don't want to use the online system when it's set up, is kind of the trickiest initial piece, but we'll try to figure out. Mark would still stay probably as a deputy zoning administrator for a period of time, so it's that in-house capacity. And then at some point, if you do like this now, you have to have your formal appoint, probably Alex, as the zoning administrator. It's an appointment you make, even though hiring and oversight falls in my office. It's, you make the formal appointment of both the ZA and the deputy ZA.
Do we have a long-term contract with them, or would it be like month sort of a thing? Or?
Yeah, we would develop, an agreement out of this scope of work that would specify the services that you see listed there, maybe spell them out in a little bit of detail, put in some benchmarks, deliverable type things, particularly with the non-zoning elements, because the zoning elements are based on the volume that comes in. And you can't really ever, you're gonna have busy periods, but exactly how much or what types, you don't know.
So if we got 6 months into this, we could just, when it wasn't working, we could easily move on to a
Yep.
different model? Okay.
Yeah, or go back to our, we look to hire somebody model, yeah.
Yeah.
Are they gonna take on enforcement also?
That would be the hope.
I don't see it in there, but I'd love to see it in there.
Yeah.
I got a few for them. Then my phone will quit ringing.
Yeah. I think we can work on that piece, because that is one of the harder to predict, harder to navigate areas of zoning, those enforcement ones.
Yep.
Some of them truly are neighbor disputes, and some of them, there's a signal in the noise. Trying to figure out what it is get tricky. So as we've had chronic shortages, this is a creative way to twist the old Rubik's Cube and try to figure out a way to provide service, to keep it running, to fill a slot, to get people back to their regular jobs, and do it in a way where there's lower risk. Like I said, the costs could drop if we're able to. We could become the owners of the regional model at some point, hire into it. Could be a contract. So, there's different ways it can split off, if, when, and however. But for now, the startup could be more of a customer provider kind of a model.
Yeah, but may I speak?
Yeah, I just
May I
have
speak,
one
Trevor?
question. Is this an already existing entity, or is this, they're creating this with
He's
Randolph as the
recently
first?
founded, he's been doing executive searches, organizational development type stuff, and so other things for organizations and for municipal entities. So he's how old is this? Probably a year. Started it after he left Hanover, so this within probably a year or so, I think.
You wanted to add some to it, Mark?
Oh yes, I just wanted to say that obviously the workflow will be taken on right away from the beginning, so there will be no reduction in the ability to perform the daily tasks right from the start. I'll be tethered very closely at the outset to help with the training. You can see the 2-year deal structure sort of back-end loaded, reducing the overall cost, municipal cost by about a third. And those are realistic numbers based off of the modeling that Alex has done to sort of present this proposal to you. So while it's a pilot project, in terms of odds of it succeeding, they're fairly high. The goal is in the streamlining of the zoning work to model it like other towns that have done this, which is technology plays an increasingly important role in the process of zoning and permitting. So if we're able to simply model the towns that have been successful with this, it'll be a real win for Randolph. And then in addition to that, like Trevor mentioned, if we're able to be a regional host, it's very helpful for us to play that leadership role with the surrounding towns. It ties into some of the work and conversations that were had prior to me and Josh being here with R3, and so it also tethers very closely to economic development work. So it really is not only is it a win, but it could really be a very strong positive impact-wise in central Vermont in the future. And again, it may not, but the odds of it working are actually pretty high. And worst case scenario, the workflow continues to get done, and at the end of the 2-year cycle, we decide to go in another direction.
Trevor. Wait, room.
So if we go this direction and it takes the zoning off you, do you take over the grant piece that Jeff had?
Correct. Yep. The Jeff has done a very good job organizing the admin stuff for grants. So picking up where he left off is probably a few hours a week. The more timely part is going to be the smaller grant activity, and some of those can take as much time as the larger grants. And if we're not subbing out the administrative work, they can take a little more time. So we just need to be mindful of the application process and what the capacity is going, during the next 2 years. So, but it certainly seems doable, especially now that the applicate or the grant process is in writing, and it's it's much more clear in terms of who for everybody in terms of applying for grants. So.
But what about the town? Like, he was gonna start working on some grants for the town, some of the energy grants and those type of things. Is that gonna shift to you with the zoning going?
Yeah, I'm not sure what those grants were, but in theory they would, yes.
Okay.
When we work plan for the next cycle here, we should come up with targets and then seek grants based on those targets. And some of them might be energy, some of them might be infrastructure, might be who knows what.
Yeah, it was just, I know he was gonna be working on some of those, so it was, if we were giving away all the rest of his job, but we'd still have a need for labor hours, like, that's all I was making sure we had covered.
They would be, yes.
What's the next step in this?
If you want to provide at least conceptual approval with some of the ads, authorize us to negotiate the scope of work within the parameters that you've seen, and we can get everything set up. We'll get it kind of queued up as if it's rolling, and then you can either formally bless it, or you can say once we're satisfied, we'll sign it. It's sort of up to you, however you want to do it.
The addition was the enforcement piece, was
Make
that?
sure the enforcement piece is spelled out, and then make sure whatever we build in, that there's sort of what the opt-out provisions would be. We'll just borrow from other agreements we've had.
I like the concept of it, but I would like to see the contract, what that looks like, kind of what they're,
Yep.
what they're doing, or, are we setting some type of a performance number in there, like respond within a certain time? I mean, we're kind of handing off customer service when people like to be able to walk into an office and get that sort of time to sit down and go over their plan and what they're trying to do and what do I need, and
Yeah, that's a great question. There'll still be plenty of time during the week to have that personal aspect and service. It will be more consultative still and less of a transactional operation. It's very important that it stays that way. So the locals there'll be hours during the week where both Alex will be in the Randolph office every single week, and there'll be hours where that overflow would be, I would be in that space as well to be able to answer one-off questions. But he will have a presence, at least generally. I think it's upwards of, I want to say 15 or 16 hours would actually be in the office. Probably more at the outset, but certainly enough to give the community opportunity to have that consultative relationship with the town.
We can even set some parameters around the hours too. We talked about it the other day with Alex in terms of it, makes sense people drop in at these times, or this seems to be anecdotally when flow.
It does say on the back 25 to 28 hours a week.
Yeah, some of that would be setting up the system, sort of back of the house support. Some of it might be meeting support, so it could vary a little bit.
Yeah, because it's also 2 meetings a month too that they'd be supporting. Would they be present at those, or would they just be offering the documentation? They'd be present at those too, so
Yeah,
that's
so
a lot of hours.
Alex would play Alex would play the primary role tethered to the DRB for the duration of the 2 years. He would be that administrator, play the administrator role with the DRB, and be tethered to the planning commission as well. So it would, there would be representation there throughout each month.
So then do we need a motion then? So,
To conceptually bless with final action to come after we worked out the contract, if I heard.
so moved. Yeah, I did that.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, American Legion request for hometown hero banners.
Are you gonna do it? We're back again. The last time we met, the select board had asked for a proposal for a scoped down banners program to get some feedback from the community, see if it's really workable. And we submitted that proposal to the select board, and I'm ready to answer any questions.
Walk me through. The planning commission looked at this and determined that the banners themselves were not able to be done with the current ordinance, or was it the time that they wanted to put them up that wasn't?
My recollection is that these sorts of banners don't fit with the ordinance in general. The ordinance says that for one thing, that the banners are to be advertising an event, and if you're not advertising an event, it doesn't seem like you could get a permit.
And that's only on the light poles, correct?
Yes,
That
that's
applies
specific.
to?
Yes, it's specifically. I'm looking at the ordinance right here. Banners on downtown light posts, banner arms, and then it says banners advertising an event, and then it goes on. Yeah, for
So
some
the
details.
banners could be put on telephone poles going up Pleasant Street, for example.
Maybe, I'd have to look at the ordinance again. There's a lot of pieces to the ordinance, and you'd have to actually look at it carefully I'd have to look at it more carefully to answer that question.
So if they wanted to put the banners on power poles, does the select board have to approve it?
I don't know, off the top of my head.
Can you remind me why the board decided to not rewrite the ordinance?
You mean the planning commission?
Yeah, thank you. I was gonna.
Planning commission's decision was that they didn't want them throughout the middle of downtown. They
But
didn't
what,
want-
I can't remember what they said, why they weren't going to reword
Yeah.
it to help them out. I can't remember why they decided not to just rewrite that section to say this type is okay. They just said, nope, we're not gonna rewrite it altogether.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember why they made that decision.
Yeah, my recollection is that one of the things that the planning commission strongly thought through was, that town staff has limited, capacity to entertain requests from groups to do this kind of thing, and that the town in general, the municipality would also need to make decisions about, who can do these sorts of things and who can't, and it seemed the planning commission thought it best if the town didn't wade into any potential controversy and having to make those kinds of judgment calls.
So if we allowed one group, we have to allow them all.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same issue we got into with the flags a few years ago.
Yeah.
When the decision was made just not to jump on it at all, not to do it.
It would be consistent with what we with how we acted in that case a few years ago.
Does the planning commission approve the wreaths that go up on every light pole? Do they come back every year and say, yeah, those wreaths are okay? I'm just asking because the wreaths are heavy.
No.
Those could very much fall and hurt somebody, as people are also concerned about these banners. So I'm just,
We allow decorations in our policy. Those are decorations.
I just want you to know, I fully support you guys, and I am struggling with this a lot.
May I
So.
interject a moment? The last discussion we had, my impression was that the board, yes, we reviewed the planning commission's decision, and it was pretty clear. But then we sort of deviated into the idea that perhaps this could be an event that was being advertised in coordination with the governor's declaration around Veterans Month of November. And that the idea of the more or less grand plan that we initially proposed was not to be approved, but that we would have maybe perhaps a smaller and more localized, and I believe it was you, Trenny, who mentioned the idea that an event would be more acceptable, because that is clearly mentioned in the banner or sign ordinance.
Yeah.
So we modified, I believe, the proposal to reflect that idea, rather than going back to the original proposal, which was pretty large. And so now we're back here, and I think with some intention of getting the select board to finalize a decision on this. Yay or nay? You've heard our explanation of this, so you know what it is. That we would tie this perhaps to a later part of the year and a minimal amount of banners and a no designation of where they were placed, whether they were on, I think we proposed that they would be localized to a certain section downtown rather than a larger group. And that this would be tied to a Veterans Day event of some kind. Now, this is all contingent on the idea that we can get 20-plus people to sponsor a family member or a person that they would like to honor with a banner. But we would really like to get the select
So
board
the
to make a
images,
decision on this.
the images that you used, on the new information that you sent in they're not talking about an event. They're still that
Well-
very basic. Is there a way to work an event onto that,
You mean on the banner itself?
on the banner?
That would probably be contingent on whether the company could do that. These banners are produced by certain companies that specialize in doing this.
Yeah.
A photograph and information of the veteran to be honored, of the person to be honored. I would think that the event itself would perhaps be advertised extra to that, or X out of that, where we would tie that into some sort of Veterans Day event. So that's where we are, and I know, I've heard you all say that you support veterans, and that's all wonderful and good, and I appreciate that, but let's sort of wrap this up,
So
because
the examples show that there's some flexibility in the top of the banner. Because
I'm
it
not,
says,
Yeah.
it has an actual Valley hometown hero, and the other one says Patriots Remembered.
Mhm.
So it almost feels to me like you could put Veterans Day up there,
You could, yeah.
and then you could put the person and their name and whatnot,
their service.
which gets you more to an event than
Yeah, Veterans Day is an event.
real
yeah.
And we
generic.
would plan something in the town, either at Grant Park or in some venue that would sort of culminate in this. I think that would be the right thing to do.
So I think in order to satisfy the ordinance, you'd have to, on that, you'd have to talk about what, like the time, the date, where, the event's gonna take place. And I think then we're getting towards something which is consistent with the ordinance.
Well, that
But
could
we
be
don't
announced
always,
in the
right?
Herald.
Because Chandler puts them up sometimes without a date and a time or anything on it.
They shouldn't. Maybe they need to.
Well, they usually do the, like, a lot of them I'm trying to remember, because you drive by them, you see them, but usually say gallery opening or holiday bazaar. But they don't have specific times, I don't think.
Veterans Day is an established date in
Right, but we have to have an event, not a date, you know. But if you put like November, is it November 11th? And yeah. So it'd have to be. So your event would have to be November 11th, or like if you want to reuse these.
But right now, what we need is the endorsement, I guess, or the permission from the select board to even proceed with this. We're not, we can't keep putting it off, because if we keep putting it off, we have to do an incredible amount of planning to recruit sponsors, or people who want to sponsor a veteran, and that takes time. And then the company which puts these banners together takes time for them to print them and get them organized. So we're talking about a window of time here where we cannot wait and wait.
I think what you're hearing though is what has to be on the banner for it to
Yes,
meet
I
the criteria
understand
of the thing. And it can say, you know, Veterans Day, November 11th.
Mm-hmm, you could.
Up there, right? Do you do something in Grant Park every Veterans Day?
We don't always do something in Grant Park on Veterans Day. We have in the past done things in Grant Park. It just depends on the planning of the group at the time and what they want to do. We've done flag burning to dispose of the damaged flags on Veterans Day. We usually concentrate on Memorial Day, which is, as you know, has already gone by. We had a great turnout for that, but but we need encouragement to continue, or we will not continue, and this will go in the trash. And so,
If we get approval, we'll have about 4 months before anything is installed on the poles, on the lights. The banners are 24 inches by 48 inches, and they'll run, in the proposal, they'll run from one main down to the Grant Park. Gazebo, rather.
it depends on how many we get. We have a minimum of 20. The company will not entertain anything less than 20, so we have to have 20 banners.
If we start now, it would give us about 3 to 4 months to get organized and start collecting the money for the banners.
And we have to vet the proposals, make sure that everything is square as far as who's, and people have to pay money to do this. The town, whoever wants to sponsor, has to pay money to have their veteran.
I think there's a path forward if the banner somehow is advertising some type of event. If you want them on the light poles on Main Street. I think your other path forward is if they're not on Main Street on the poles, but you look at some other type of structure.
Well, we've looked at the light company, the electric company already. We talked to them as a fallback position. But we really would like to have the town be part of this, not just be going around trying to get, it would be nice to have the town's support.
I think that your path forward is that it somehow is advertising the event.
So can we entertain the idea of having approval contingent on advertising an event?
I also have another point of, so the ordinance says 31 days, and you guys had 45 days proposed. So it says, such banners shall be allowed for no more than 31 days and shall be removed within 7 days after the event it is promoting takes place.
I don't see a problem with that.
So we'd have to adjust that, yeah, to fit in there. That was the only other
The only other one I heard was somebody wanting to know how you were gonna screen the people. I think there was one case where the individual that was put on the flag was facing some pretty
Yeah, we intend to do that.
gnarly charges.
Yeah, we'll vet the applicant.
Yeah, and I would imagine that if something came out after you vet it, even though I'm sure you'll do your best, that we would remove anyone who is not
A
deemed.
serial killer?
Sure, yeah, or, there's gotta be, like, I'm sure you guys will be reasonable about that if something falls through the cracks here.
When I first started looking into this, all of the towns that have it now, Bennington is going pretty large on banners. I looked at their ordinances, okay, and there's nothing in their ordinances about banners. They went directly to the Selectboard to get approval. I really think you're concentrating too much on what the ordinance says.
Or the ordinance has too much in it.
Say again?
Or the ordinance has too much in it. Who helped
But-
draft that, so?
We can have the planning commission go in and try to revise the ordinance again. I thought it was a good revision when it was submitted. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend the meeting because I was snowed in that particular day. So that may have had an impact on why it wasn't approved.
I think it's a good idea to move forward as long as it's advertising.
I think
And
so
event.
too. I think, yeah, and then just the change of the days and stuff, just to stay within that. I think that gives us, like, it's within the ordinance. It's much better than the original proposal, which was a little bit a lot, yeah. Yep.
Molly, would you like the honors of making that motion?
So moved.
Given the constraints.
Yes.
Okay.
Given the constraints put forward,
Second.
yes.
And the proposals, we have a specific area in mind. Was that in the
One
letter you
name to
sent
the
us?
gazebo.
It is.
Yeah.
So it's just that one block,
That-
right?
It's a very constrained area. I
Merchants
think it
Plaza.
needs to be that way to start and have it in a,
It goes from one Main Street down to the gazebo.
Okay.
Do you know how many light poles are in that section?
somebody does. They've gone out and
Yeah.
counted them all several times.
There's probably, there's at least,
6 to 8, something like
yeah, I
that.
would say there's probably at least 7, and then you have 2 sides, so you have 14 right there. So,
They have 20, 20. That's all
are we
right.
talking about both sides of the street? Because there's one right by Kelly Way that's been flickering, by the way. So we're talking about,
Just in case anyone else has mentioned
it's
it.
the one that we replaced 2 times.
I was gonna say that one.
Yeah, that's the one that keeps
one's a
getting
magnet.
hit.
Yeah, you may not wanna use that one.
But there's one there, and then,
Huh?
so if we talking about both sides of the street, coming down in front of like New Moon, and there's a few there. So I think between all of that, you have at least 10 light poles that would then have 2 arms. I think 20 would fit in there. And so if you kind of cut out like on that side, like Kelly Way, ish. Maybe there's like one more light pole that's like in front of the church. I'm trying to think. So but in
You
that.
end up with 20 and you don't have enough light poles, then all we have to do is amend the length of space.
I think 20 would be a good number.
Yeah, so from Kelly Way.
I mean, even like
which is,
railroad track, because then you catch 2 right in front of the
uh,
jewelry
uh,
store,
shops.
and then maybe 1 or 2
20
in front.
feet minimum.
Yeah,
We could approve 20 for now and see how it goes.
Within that block radius.
So instead of
We're
having
saying
it from
20
one,
is the minimum
Yeah.
to make it work cost-wise.
instead of doing it from one main to the gazebo, do it from
20
the
minutes.
railroad tracks,
To Kelly Way.
Yeah.
north, 20 poles,
Okay, yeah. Okay, so
north, yeah.
does that include it in your motion?
Yes.
Okay.
20 polls, event information.
31 days.
In time.
31 days.
Well, we have to follow the ordinance,
Yeah.
so.
And then, do we want to establish dates now, or, I mean, if it's 7 days after, Veterans
It's
Day.
October 18th to
Yep.
November 18th if you did 7.
October 18th to November
I had
18th
to
would
count
be.
them twice, I still may not have gotten it right, but
It's 31 days in October, so you're probably right.
Okay.
try to add it in there.
All right, so I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You got it?
Thank you very much.
Best of luck.
UTV policy updates.
Mindy is here
I am.
The whole thing.
for the whole shoot.
Yeah. I got most of the way through it. I'm sorry, but
Okay.
118 pages to go through the night before is
Come on,
a little pushy.
really?
I know. But I had to go to graduation today. There was no missing that. Sorry. I think I just got through it. That's what I was doing, sitting there a little bit.
Can I say something to it?
Can we wait for the other member to come back? I think you hit the big items, if that helps you. I took my
I
notes,
think I did too. But
which were
I'll
not,
wait,
were
so I'll
bad.
just wait.
And I walked through and it looked like they were all in there, so I was good with it. Is that what you're here for, Lauren? Are you here for that, or you got something else?
Yeah. You know, that machine
It's a-
would
it's
help
a- It's like a
tremendously.
side by side.
You know Brian Jones, they have like
ATV with you sit in.
he's a man bigger than I am.
Utility vehicle.
We ended up counting
Utility training vehicle.
It's like an ATV, but it has 2 seats in the front, you drive
It's
it.
like the horse.
Like we had a machine of our own, we wouldn't have to wait 20
I
minutes.
got it, yeah.
Brookfield, for some
I'm just
reason,
coveted,
keeps
so
getting
that
called
goes
out
got
on
its
force
cookie
calls.
with candy.
That was way out in the
Reach
woods
that point,
and
yeah.
got down,
Yeah.
and they called in
Lugging somebody
Brookfield.
out of the woods is not fun, it's not safe, it's not easy. It just isn't,
No.
That's very time
yeah.
As we're kind of talking, I do a lot of work with the Ridgeline Trail search and rescue stuff. So this has been a pretty exciting opportunity for that need. Hopefully we never have to use it for the trail stuff, but it has been an exciting potential for having this equipment because we've had to do it in construction before.
Look at that. We actually still have a forum, we can keep going, she can catch up.
And I had to come see you.
I know that, thank you, good save. It's been a while.
So I'll just say that this is like 2 years of us, and this thing is 2023. Like, we get it, like, we didn't, it is what it is, right? We spent, I wrote down the total, $49,053 so far. That's what we spent. We're donating to the town of Randolph. And we just wanna be able to use it, right? So I get it, and I know that there's problems with, maybe how we went around it or whatever. I will say, I appreciate you reading through it. Here's my piece of it, is I feel a little disrespected, because I did send emails to try to get the comments. I received it last Wednesday, the markup.
That was my fault.
So, as a department
But I
head,
also told you to reach out to me, we'd sit down. and
well,
go
I
through
reached
it,
out to
but-
my administrator,
Yeah,
right? So I'm a department head. I know that I'm not a full-time employee of the town. Maybe you didn't choose me.
me neither,
Right,
but I feel it.
you didn't, me too, right?
Took on more than
Right,
one,
so
didn't
I'm
it?
just, I'm
So we have a draft now.
So I'm just frustrated about it. So you saying that I sent it just as fast as I could after reviewing the comments. I actually brought it in front of the advisory on Tuesday to add to it this is what my proposal was. I did take your guys' comments. I think that, I hit the highlights. There were some parts that I didn't add in, to be upfront with you, didn't. But I think I came to a good compromise and a good proposal that I think can be used and going forward, we can just go, where the trailer's sitting at Lucky's, waiting for me to go spend $14,000. to put it in our station.
Did anybody read through the entire document and compare it to the comments?
I didn't compare, but I did read.
I can hit a couple highlights if you
Did
want.
you look into the question of whether, so with ATVs and UTVs, you get stuck with that USDOT helmet?
Yep, so.
What do they do with that with fire
So-
helmets? That was one of
Right.
my questions. I was
Gotcha,
curious
so I
about.
did have that as a note, because I made some notes off the thing that, so there, so I was looked at the state law. The state law says that you have to wear a helmet if you're riding in areas where UTVs are allowed to be. Right, so where they're VASA, right? That is all the law says, I actually, I want to look at those laws.
So as long as you don't go on any other trails,
Right.
you're good?
So I spoke to East Montpelier Fire. They have a UTV, actually have their policy, they have helmets. They use those, like rock climbing helmets, like tech rescue helmets. That's what they use. So I think that was our compromise of, that was a big deal for you guys. I don't think by law we have to, but the guys driving and stuff, it's probably not a terrible idea. And those tech rescue helmets, I have no clue how much they are. We'll buy them, I don't care.
I thought it was part of what VLCT wanted.
I didn't,
I thought they brought up like an employee safety thing.
I didn't get anything from them. I didn't see
Mike
anything.
did.
What's that?
Mike did. We went over some of this with him.
Right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, my idea is to use those tech rescue helmets. We have hard hats too that have straps that we use for wildland firefighting. Those would be another probably possible option. I put in there the exceptions to that because somebody that is hurt or deceased, we probably won't put a helmet on, right, on a stretcher. So I thought, East Montpelier, you shall wear a helmet. Like if somebody's hurt, how are they gonna put a helmet on? Right, so I put that exception in there. So that is my idea, is to use those. And I think by law, obviously, right, there's insurance pieces of it, but by law, I think we're covered. And I think that's good enough for us. I mean, I think there's a lot of exemptions when it comes to emergency response. It's just what is appropriate that we have to justify to insurance companies, right? And I think if we're using those tech rescue helmets, I think that's appropriate.
And you're gonna collect the data on the vehicles that will tow it and make sure they have
I
the
will.
right insurance coverage and everything's
Yep, I think
covered
that's
on
the
that?
new document that Judy shared with me, that I don't think we've ever had a document that had to say that, because I don't think we knew we had to. So that's a piece that I actually have to go over with Scott too, to make sure that we all have driver's licenses, but we have to be able to CT that thing says that you have to get checked to make sure you're valid. So I'll be working on that. But I will keep a record, it's in there, right, we have records on who's interior, who can drive the tanker, who can drive engine 3, who can drive engine 1. Has been updated probably a little bit, still new to the chief's thing, right? But we have all those lists, and it's not gonna be any different with this. It's gonna be the same thing, we're gonna have a list of who can operate.
Questions, comments, concerns? Given that we're paying attention to the iPads, I'm gonna take that as a no. Any motions?
Motion to approve.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Are we giving Trevor authority to sign?
Motion to give Trevor authority to sign.
You can amend the existing motion to.
I amend my existing motion to approve and give Trevor authority to sign.
Second.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for coming.
Aye.
It's all because you came.
You
See
have-
how much easier it was?
You have no idea how hard
Earlier?
this has been. I've been earning the money to buy
Was it a
this.
good lifesaver?
Good to see you there.
Yeah. Take care.
See y'all later.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, glad to see you back in Braintree.
Oh, that's right.
That's another story for another day. If I had my cell phone, I'd send you a story. You seen it?
No, but, oh, I saw the one in the paper. But,
This was on, I don't know where it came from, but somebody sent it to me. I just couldn't believe that all the stuff that they wrote about me.
a lot of them love
They even
you.
had a poem about me.
Yes?
It's like, holy crap. They're even having a party for me.
Well, there you go. Feel the love, bud.
What's that?
Feel the love.
Yeah. You don't want me to go, that's the problem.
A little late.
I just can't work with the select board up there.
Well, don't you wish you had us? All right. Kimball Library request to approve a VHCB preservation easement.
Well, since we're feeling the love, I start off with some gratitudes to Judy for putting a heads up in Front Porch Forum to watch out for traffic today. Thank you, Judy. To Kayla, who's been running the day-to-day financial operations with Selectboard for Megan, but since January, I'm rocking it. A gratitude to Mimi, who has excellent problem solving and knot tying skills, in case you wanted to know, who helped me solve a problem at the library this week. And to Morgan, who for 6 weeks was shepherding 18 kids around, helping them learn bike safety, how to do bike repairs, how to age up in the bike club and mentor younger kids, and also how to express gratitude with these cool cards that they gave to us at the library. If you can't tell, there are like 20 bikes parked on the library's front lawn. So it's been pretty good week here. So I'm gonna do like a summary of the saga of the library's cupola since
Well, I think we got that last time, so
Yeah,
I
know.
don't think we need
there's
that
some-
again.
There's some bits and pieces here I'm not sure everybody on the select board is aware of. For instance, it's been 11 years since we discovered that the library's cupola was leaking into the attic. That's a long time. That after we had accumulated $200,000 to pay for the restoration of the cupola, and the project went out to bid in 2022. We got a bid for $721,000. We have been successful in having $450,000 committed to the project, which to me is a huge amount of money. We've got the money from the town, we've got the money from the library trustees, the Vermont Division for Historic Preservation, a congressionally directed spending earmark that's being administered by the National Park Service, money from the Preservation Trust of Vermont. So we've got $450,000 together for this. Where we are today is Thaler Riley Wilson is the architecture and historic preservation firm that the library trustees contracted with to do construction management, beginning with the assessment of the current conditions. So you have the report in the packet that you got. Reading this report gave me huge appreciation for how much knowledge the architect and the Preservation Trust bring to bear on this subject, because there is no way that I would be able to tell you any element of what they were able to report here in terms of what what we're facing and what our next steps are going to be. So, just a quick overview for those of you who aren't familiar with the library and its leaky cupola and didn't get to read the report yet. Du Bois and King did the structural engineering analysis, and it was a real relief to determine that their analysis indicates that the wood framing that's in existence there now is sufficient to meet the Vermont code requirements for the dead snow and wind loads. So we don't need to worry about that. That doesn't need to be altered in any way. It was also really cool to hear that the copper cladding itself is in good condition mostly. There's a potential that some or all of it can be reused. Always better to reuse material that you have than have to bring in new. The thing that gives some pause is that some of the original installation techniques, so if this is from 1902, actually encourage water to infiltrate behind the copper cladding into the wood. And for those of us who are not experts in historic preservation and building techniques, I'm going to use my hands to demonstrate. If we call the hemispherical part of the cupola the dome, and then the part around the bottom the drum, there are, the way the copper has been joined in the drum is with butt joints. So that means that as the solder in between the joints deteriorates, the water can travel behind it easily. So that's one issue in terms of the way the original cladding was installed. Another issue is that if this is the vertical member and this is the horizontal member of the drum as it steps down, rather than this horizontal member being tipped out so water runs off, it's tilted back so water pools. So again, as the solder has deteriorated between these joints, it encourages water to get in behind into the sheathing. And so that is indeed what they found when they peeled back the copper in that area that the wood has been affected. So with the full report in hand and with the understanding that they took a wider view than just the cupola itself, Riley Wilson also discovered things like the drip edge of the roof encourages water to run down onto the fascia board, so you could see paint peeling in those locations. Things I never knew about our roof, like there's a hole in the ridgeline that I have no idea how long it's been there or if it served a purpose. That should probably be sealed up. Flashing on the gable ends, where again water is encouraged to accumulate and get back into the wood. So those aspects of the assessment that they did are not part of the project that is being funded by the grant money. And so the library trustees will need to determine whether that is included in an overall contract as an added alternate, which means that contractors would say, okay, for the cupola restoration, this is the cost. For the add alternate, could be 3 or 4 different projects, this is the cost. That part we have to figure out still, whether it makes more sense to have one single large project that is going to be more attractive to a single contractor, or whether the price point is going to be too high to try to tackle this all at once. I don't know, that's in the future. But it is good to know that there are other projects that we do need to be keeping in mind to maintain the building. So the next step is to get together with the Preservation Trust, the National Park Service, and the Vermont State Historic Preservation Officer, or the SHPO as they're called. The National Park Service really drives the bus when it comes to determining how the work will be approached, what are the means and methods that can be used to restore in accordance with the Department of the Interior, Secretary of the Interior's historic preservation standards. So here's the good news, as far as I'm concerned, it's really good news. The National Park Service is not like FEMA. I'm sure you all are well aware that FEMA will reimburse a certain amount of the cost of repairing damage if you put the stuff back the way it was before the damage occurred. The National Park Service does not approach historic preservation in this way. Their interest is in making sure that you have longevity out of the repair. So with that said, we have a reasonable expectation that rather than going back to installing the cladding on that drum with butt joints and, reverse pitch, they're going to need to look at how to improve the construction techniques while still staying in the character of the original. So I bring that up because it starts introducing complexity into what the bid specifications will include. Will it mean that we reuse part of the copper? Will it mean that we replace all of the copper? All of these, this is complexity that we're gonna have to work out with them. Hopefully by the end of the summer, we will have clarity from the National Park Service and Thaler Riley Wilson can move forward with actually putting together the bid specifications. So our timeline is looking great in terms of being geared up to be ready to hire for next year for the construction season, except for the money. Did anybody have any questions about the Thaler Riley Wilson report or next steps?
So now that you have this report from them, what's the budget or the cost estimate on the project?
They won't be able to put together a cost estimate until they have the approval of the National Park Service of what approach can be taken. Will we be told that we have to reuse the original copper in all the places? We cannot apply better construction techniques? Will the decision be to use a mix of old and new copper? If that's the case, is there a coating that goes on the exterior so that they blend? Do we go for a natural patina, but they would have a different, that cost estimate will come after the direction is clear.
So right now you have potentially 450,000. Are you gonna have to break down your scope of work to only do the amount of work you have money for?
It can't be broken down. This is a single project. It has to be done at once. There's no logical way to go up there to establish scaffolding, which is likely what will have to be done to do just part of it. It's all
So where's
or
the
nothing.
balance of the money coming from?
Well, that's, part of that is up to you because we've secured $450,000. $150,000 is on the line. And that's the grant from the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. So this grant, we were awarded in 2023. And the 2-year grant term ends June 20th, so that's 8 days. Now they're eager to extend the deadline on this grant. But as you know, the strings attached to it are the perpetual historic preservation easement.
And specifically their ability to manage any work that wants to be done on it, right? So they can have an impact on our capital program. Has any of that changed with the new administration?
The administration at the federal level?
Yeah.
The change I see at the federal level is we can't expect any federal funding to help with this project. And the pressure that's going to be on states and private foundations to pick up the slack where all that federal money has gone away is going to be enormous.
But most of your grant programs and your grant administration all the rules are changing on them. So what you have to do and a lot of those strings are quite a bit different.
You mean from the National Park Service? There are no
From
changes.
everywhere, because we're seeing it all over the place.
I have heard of no changes from the National Park Service. And they're responsible ultimately for $250,000 of the $450 that's been secured.
So, but we haven't had any conversations with them either, right? They haven't reached out to say this has changed, but we haven't reached out to them to say, has anything changed?
No, I've been in touch, particularly with Janet Lapachinsky with the Preservation Trust of Vermont, and I'm in touch with her because she administers the Broom grant.
Mhm.
PTV is a sub-grantor from the National Park Service, and she is in touch with them constantly. So no, there have been no changes in terms of you can't talk about DEI in your building if you take this money. There's been nothing like that.
We're just seeing a lot of changes in the other federal programs, but not necessarily, there is those type, the petty ones, but we're seeing a lot more of like changes to NEPA and changes, like the big helpful ones, and a lot of loosening up on the government control. So a lot of the things like this, whole them wanting to be able to come in and tell us what to do and how to do it type stuff, a lot of that is, we're losing a lot of the bureaucratic steps that we have to do with a lot of the federal transportation money, which is awesome. But there's also a Supreme Court decision that just happened on NEPA, which is good. I should forward that to you.
The Section 106 review has not changed, and that's, the Section 106 review is to make sure that projects like this are in compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic preservation.
Agreed, but that's not where we have the challenge, right? We have the challenge in the easement where it says that they have I forget what the exact language is, I could look it up, but where they have the ability to come in and tell us what we're gonna do. And they say, it's in there.
I don't see that
And-
language anywhere in this easement. What I see is they want to be in an advisory relationship.
But that's not the language they use. And they say, well, that's how we've always put it into practice. And my concern there is leadership changes, right? So when we look at what's happening and, you're only as good as that final document.
So could you take a moment and find that language so we can wrestle with it?
We went through it. We went through it with the Preservation Trust folks.
I haven't.
You were part of it.
I have the whole thing. I haven't seen anything in this either that.
I don't even know if I have a paper copy of it. When did you? Hang on.
Let's see if I have one on hand. It looks like you found it?
Yeah.
Good.
Probably not gonna be productive for me to sit here and read this while the meeting gets brought to a halt. But I know we went through it because I sent the marked up one and I sat in on all the conversations with them. And they said, if you read it literally, that's what it says, but that's not how we do it in practice. Well, I'm sorry, but that's what good lawsuits are made out of, is that kind of a complexity. And we've had the conversation with them about doing a side agreement that would talk about how they would implement it. And last I knew, they were not sure that they could do that.
So unfortunately, I was never part of any of the conversations that you all had with the town's attorney. I was not part of the conversations you had directly with VHCD. I look at this document and what it says to me is that the VHCB wants to make sure, and I, as the person who's responsible for the library building, want to make sure that there are guardrails in place so that I or my successor or my successor's successor's successor in 80 years is not making well-meaning but uneducated, ignorant decisions about how to manage a building that requires really specialized care. And I think that, the town and the community has made 125 years worth of investment in this building.
So even if we set aside the decision on the grant, there's still a $300,000 shortfall from your original estimate.
Correct.
Where's that coming from?
At this point, undetermined.
And so when does the project have to be out to bid and constructed for the grants?
Have to be, we're hoping we can get it out to bid next spring. I'm finding that funders have a vested interest in providing extensions on deadlines when we show good faith effort to complete projects on time and run into roadblocks. And as a case in point, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, we're at the end of their 2-year grant term, but they want to give us an extension. They awarded us $150,000 and we asked for $100,000. So I think their commitment is pretty clear. To preserving this building so it can be useful for the community for more generations.
While we do this, do you guys want to move on to some of the other items, or are you looking at the agreement too?
I'm trying to go back and find it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesus, only me left. What is there?
So I think the areas that we're concerned on are in section 2. And I believe these are the ones that we had the conversation with them, painting the picture of how we do our capital plan. And if you look in item, let me just get the definitions of who's who. So if you look in here, it's saying that the town of Randolph, not the library, the town of Randolph is agreeing at all times to maintain the interior features and facades in good sound state of repair and the structural soundness and safety of the building. The obligation to maintain is gonna require whatever. And so that's tying the town into those activities. And then it also says that we will not make or permit alterations to the exterior, without the other folks' approval and whatnot. But, so it's tying the town into the list of repairs, and whatnot, which aren't necessarily the town's decisions on that piece. And then there's a compliance. Item 6 says that the town agrees to assume the total cost of continued maintenance, repair, safety, and administration of the protected property so as to preserve the integrity of the building. So that's putting it on the town, right?
To maintain a building that belongs to the town, yes.
Right. But it's putting everything on the town, which it's not on right now.
Well,
And then it also, then it goes over into enforcement and says failure to cause, what their corrective action is. And so the challenge with this is if we don't do a certain item, so say you decide something needs to be done, it doesn't go through the capital program, to where you like it, then you can be, could Preservation Trust come in and say the town has to do this activity? That's where our problem was, like, if you decide you wanna replace a door in a building, that's a minor one, the cupola, if it's gonna be paid for by the town completely, right, it has to go through the capital plan, it has to be prioritized, there's other competing interests. This allows, this piece here would allow the library to push it back onto the town, and the town has to prioritize that project or we're in default.
I don't see this in a plain reading.
Well, they
of the
agreed with us
document.
when we met with them.
The HCD said yes,
They
you have to
said
prioritize the library.
It comes out in the literal reading of it, but they said, well, that's not how we operate. That's when we ask for the side agreement. then, okay, then tell us how you're gonna operate. Like, what is those pieces? And I think that's where they said they couldn't do it.
So I will refer back to the research that I did before the meeting in May. There has not been a single lawsuit on either side, either from VHCB saying you're in default on this agreement, or from an entity that has granted a historic preservation easement saying to VHCB, you've overstepped.
Then they
And the
shouldn't
tra-
be bashful about entering into an agreement about how that works, what the steps are and what the process is, but they are.
They're following their policy, historic preservation easement, and that's, as they keep saying, those are the rules tied to the money. So $150,000 on the line here. I think either you can look at the track record and consider the goals of VHCB to preserve historic buildings in Vermont for their communities. You can look at the track record of the Preservation Trust of Vermont. They've been involved in this project literally from the beginning. I have gone to them again and again for their guidance because they know this stuff and I don't. And they're the ones who would be responsible for acting on behalf of VHCB in this easement, as they are for the 2-term easements that you did agree to for the National Park Service money. I look at that and I think their purpose is to make sure that communities and entities that have these historic buildings have the resources and they are able to find the funding to maintain their buildings. I am not inclined to think that they're waiting for an I gotcha, well, we're gonna tell you what to do. I just don't see any evidence of that.
So if they're waiting for the town, for some type of signal to extend the time, we're nowhere near ready to go to construction at this point, right? There's only maybe half of the money found to do the project. Is it worth a conversation with them about them extending the grant? No, because we don't have the money to do the project. The project is a no-go right now. You know, if they're willing to hold it, then we can continue to work out our issues with them. And then if we agree to take the grant, we can get into some type of agreement at that point. And it might give us the chance to, you know, we know there's a few new views in that office now, but it might give us another shot at the side agreement and negotiating that piece out while keeping the funding in the mix should the balance of whatever the mystery number is be figured out.
I think it's easier to imagine the term of the easement if the dispute resolution process is spelled out should the need arise. Whether it ever has is sort of irrelevant. We want the protection if it does. And that's really what that's what we've asked for, whether it be in the easement or separate from. Can we spell out what happens if there's some sort of, when I say dispute resolution, fix this, fix it now, hey wait, we've got to balance all of these other competing needs. Can we come up with a mutually agreeable plan? Where does the money come from? So we truly work together on that, and those pieces aren't spelled out anywhere. I think those are the pieces that we've come back to over and over again. just however that could be formalized, I think would provide at least a more solid basis from which to make a decision.
I'm wondering if we're getting slightly off track. When we approved we approved recently a couple of other awards that are very similar, but they weren't perpetual, right? They were
5-year.
I thought one of them was for 20 years.
One might have been a 15 in the mix. This was all, we did the
It was a
other
few months ago.
grant, a while back, so I don't
I think one of them was for 20 years. And the terms, if I remember right, were the same otherwise. Whether it was, and that the only real difference between those and this one is that those were capped, they were time limited in terms of how long they were going to kind of hold our hands through the process. And I feel like if we were okay with their process for even a 15-year period, I think it really was 20, but even if it was only 15, like, that's still a pretty long time from now. And if our concerns about it that we're talking about now are really valid, then I'm not sure why we would have signed a 15-year agreement. It seems like we would have had the same issues.
The one we did, I thought we said, well, worst case, we can drag our feet to get to the end of it and resolve it that way. So I'm not sure 50 is the right number.
Yeah, I don't recall that. My recollection is really that it was about it being perpetual, that was the
That's a
idea
long
that we
time.
were going to be sort of tying the hands of the municipality at some pretty distant date, and I don't know, I felt pretty comfortable with that, because it is a lot of money, and I don't see where this money is coming from otherwise, and especially with the way the world is right now, it seems like these kinds of funding opportunities are going to become harder than even we thought a few months ago, than easier in the future. It just seems even more important to do this, to see if we can make, because even with this money, it's going to be hard to raise the additional funds to complete this project. And like, I love that building. And it would be a real shame for the community to really lose a substantial part of the value of that structure because, we were worried about this, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but what I think is still a somewhat theoretical concern about something which could happen in the future, but is probably pretty unlikely. And when I balance it all out in my head, I think, yeah, there's a certain amount of risk in the future for taking the money, but it seems like it's greatly, in my head again, greatly counterbalanced by the more immediate benefit that we are going to get, kind of like in the very near future, that this money will bring. So I really think it would make sense for us to
Trevor,
do
since
it.
you've come to Randolph, how many firsts have you had that you didn't think would ever happen?
We've had a few. We've had a run.
I could,
I mean,
like I
it's out
said,
there, but if we can buy the time, if they're willing to extend the offer, because they're not gonna wanna give the grant if the whole project isn't funded anyway. Okay, usually they look for something.
but
when
is
they want
there
the full
is there some way
budget.
for us to just? I want to make sure that that we're not playing with like fire here, because like Amy said that they really want to extend this, but like, is there some way we can signal to them that like we'd really like to accept this money and we're trying to figure out how to do it, and we would like an extension. Like, I want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in danger of losing the possibility of this grant. That's like it's a lot of money.
I think it's good to signal to them that we wanna work with them to get the money, but we want this kind of side agreement, or to understand what this looks like when we have a disagreement. Most contracts have it. And all the state ones have a dispute resolution process in them, but this one doesn't. But then, they're not gonna award it until you have the whole project funded. Usually, they wanna see the whole project and how it's gonna go, but.
I still feel like if we thought it was gonna be something we could do for 15 or 20 years, we could do it for a longer stretch too. It's hard for me to.
It's a long stretch.
Can we do a conditional acceptance that we get that agreement in hand?
Mhm.
And that might just give them enough incentive to do something to make the agreement happen. So moved.
I would, if
Oh.
you'd be open to it, just amend it to include some sort of quick pivot to the extension request if for some reason that door slams shut, then we don't lose that part of it, so maybe it
We'll
could be
proceed with the
tiered.
conditional, yeah, okay. So to ask for an extension.
Can you be open to some public comment before you go on to action?
Well, we
Normally,
could,
if there's public comment, there's general public comment at the beginning, and before a board makes
we're
action.
trying to motion to conditionally accept it, so what else would you like?
Well, I'm just curious, our building is getting water, leaking water into it. It's been going on for 11 years. And I would just like to know, I'm curious, what does this select board feel that it wants for the town's building? We
So I
have
just-
an opportunity, we would be up to $600,000 if we can get this additional grant.
Did you hear my motion?
$450.
Yeah.
Yes, 450
Is the
before we
150 on
get the
top of the
150.
450?
Yes.
I was asking Amy, thank you.
Oh, excuse me, sorry.
Yes, if you approve accepting the grant from VCB, we're at 600 grand.
What was the total again, Amy? I'm sorry, I didn't write it from earlier. The current, or the last total estimate
We have secured,
for the whole project?
for the project?
Yeah, last estimate.
The bid we got in 2022 was 721,000.
So
And I-
22, so that's.
And we don't know what a new bid will come at. I mean, likely higher, but who knows? It's a very small group of people who bid on these things.
I'm dying to
And
see the estimate.
if we're going from 450 to 6, again, we don't know for sure until we go off a bid, but there's a good chance that by getting to 6, we're getting close. Like, it wouldn't be a stretch to think that we could raise that in the community, it just seems like it's that piece that's gonna get us to where we're making it, the rest of the fundraising really doable. Or at least it seems like that's
And so doesn't
much more
Stephanie's
likely.
motion do that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
I'm
asking.
just sort of painting the picture.
Yeah, so, I mean, the problem is that we don't have any dispute we don't have that in place, so I think it's a reasonable request to ask that that be spelled out to us, which is the motion I just made, and if that happens, then we would accept the grant. That was the motion. Do you have any more public comments, or are you
Well,
good?
no, I was trying to I would like to understand where the select board feels. In 1985, it was put on the National Historic Register. Part of that, now the federal government doesn't come through and check, but the idea is if we're gonna be ethical as a town and maintain our building on that National Register, it would seem to me that we would want to work to continue to have that in the future, and it sounds like there's some fear about allowing that easement in perpetuity, but there's also a real reluctance to work with an agency that, I looked at their easement program, and they very clearly say that they agree to work in partnership. They're wanting to partner with people, with towns, and I understand that there is a what if, there's the what if, but there's also the what if, okay, what if we don't accept this? So that means we wait another couple of years while we struggle to try and find funding sources. in the meantime, that water is seeping into the wood around the cupola, and we're having increased damage, which means increasing costs. And I'm just curious, where do you all see I mean, what's your idea of where the building is going? I'm curious.
Did you miss the fact that she was voted, her motion is to accept it
yes.
after we get this dispute resolution piece worked out with them?
Okay, and here's my what if. What if you don't get that?
Then we'll be back here having the conversation again.
And then we miss our window
All
to
right,
get.
well, I need to
it
go home to my kids, so I guess I'm gonna go miss this vote. So,
So we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I
to it?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
So, I think I need more clarity, perhaps Trevor can help me understand what the needs are from the town side for me to communicate to legal counsel at UCB. Because I'm not quite sure the particularities you all are looking for. In fact, I'm not sure at all, so I'll just be honest.
Okay.
So Trevor, can you make a date to do that sooner rather than later?
You said the 20th was the deadline?
Yep, the grant term ends on the 20th.
Yeah, I should be around Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay, can I send you an email tomorrow and we can pick a date?
Send it to Judy because I won't be here tomorrow, and then we can get that on calendar, that way we don't miss anything in the between.
Okay, great, thank you, I appreciate your time.
So we have the walk bike roll grant award. They'd asked for that to be moved to next month. So we'll skip over that to the tax stabilization for the My Place Hotel.
We were able to
Can we take
locate,
the conversation out, please? Thanks.
I don't know how many of you have seen or have heard the whole. So we sent the agreement as proposed over to the town attorney for review, and one of his first questions was, can you confirm that the voters gave the board authorization to enter these agreements? 2 weeks later, and a trip back to 1957 with more than a few stops along the way, we found the original vote to convey that authority to the board. Thankfully, they did it by paper or other counted ballot, so we can say that it did hit, because statute requires a 2/3 approval threshold. So the 1973 vote to confirm the authority wouldn't have sufficed because it only had about 60% as an approval rate. So Judy this afternoon was able to locate the vote, 191-25, it's 88%, so we sent that over to Mike. So there isn't anything necessarily for action right now, but we at least have been able to prove that you do have the authority as conveyed in 1957, unless for some reason Mike has a different interpretation. At one point in the early 90s, there were two different opinions from two different attorneys on what to do. This has been quite the historic odyssey and journey. Obviously, if the authority wasn't there, it opened up a whole hornet's nest of other issues, so thankfully we don't seem to have those. So now that we've confirmed that, he can finish his review and then we can return and revisit that.
So the, whoops, if I looked. Hang on, sorry. In the minutes for that meeting, we had approved it in principle pending the review by the attorney. So do we need it to come back? If the attorney says it's good to go, is it good to go?
I think
And
you
it
could-
doesn't need to come back to us?
Yeah, based on that
So we
motion,
can get it done?
it could sit and, or go forward, I should say, as conditionally approved, and then if he's got something more monumental, can come back.
So this, this is the board will review the town attorney's feedback and make a final formal decision on the stabilization agreement. So do we have to make a final formal decision, or do we have to change that? Do we need a motion that says that the attorney comes back and says it's valid?
Yeah, I think the way that that's structured envisions that you'd have, you'd put eyeballs on the attorney's review and then take action, finalize. We could do that.
Is that a good way to do it, or should we say as long as the attorney approves it, we're good? What are you most comfortable with?
I think it's a good way to do it, because just knowing Mike and Mike's work, he's gonna fall somewhere in between.
Okay.
And that at least gives us a chance to talk through anything that's in there. He's super thorough and we're well served, but he seems to always fit between those two pieces.
Okay. And if it's pretty benign, we can do that by email too.
Yeah, ratify.
All right, managers report.
We have had interviews for the finance instructor's position, 3 first rounders. We'll have some second rounders hopefully in early July. That's pretty exciting to have candidates, qualified, capable candidates. They all bring different things to the table. We might even have a candidate for a water wastewater operator position. We're talking through some of the details. Pay rates might be an issue, but we don't know that for a fact yet. If we are able to hire into those 2 slots, we will be down to 5 vacancies across 3 departments, which is progress. We're headed in the right direction. We're reviewing going all the way back to the FY24 draft audit. We're reviewing that, trying to see how everything shakes out. The July 23 storm event, some of the expenses related to that make certain provisions of that audit in terms of how we performed look pretty wonky. So highway in particular looks like we really overspent, $400 and something thousand overspent. Payments are going to show up in FY25. We've been paid for a lot of that temporary or other response work, so we'll try to tie the 2 together when you see them, so you'll know if there's anything structural that requires any kind of action. You can pull that aside and how much versus what was related to that one event. So we did have a few unexpected hits in there related to workers' comp rates and a few other things, but they might be able to be absorbed otherwise once we separate it. So we're doing that across budgets, closing fiscal 25. And that audit will start shortly thereafter. And then once that audit's complete, we know where we landed. It'll be easier to do some of the other projects that lie ahead with some level of certainty. The capital planning projects, chief among them. But I think overall we're okay, but in individual funds, I saw some areas that I'm a little concerned.
Yeah.
But I want to know the details, make sure. Some cases we just didn't book internal revenue. I mean, there's stuff that we still may be able to figure out, but.
All right, executive session. Does anybody want to find that we got to go into it?
That's Stephanie's job.
You don't have to read the whole thing,
She's
just
not
say,
here.
say so moved.
So, I can do that.
Yeah.
So moved.
I second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. And then a motion to move to an executive session.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.